Well, in keeping how we've been starting these services, a Christian and a Jew and a Muslim and an atheist walk into a Starbucks and they order coffee and they sit down and then they talk and they laugh and they become friends. This isn't a joke. This is what happens when you're not a jerk. In the little cartoon, it started with an A, but still, you get it. You know, this whole idea about creating your experience, you're creating your world. Sometimes I had trouble with that. I said, I can't have a great life if there are conditions that aren't good. You know, how is my life supposed to be great when I know that these conditions exist that aren't good? But a lot of it really has to do with what you focus on. We are creating our world because our world is not just what's in front of us. It's what we make out of what's in front of us. It's what we choose to focus on. Sometimes I talk to people working with couples and stuff, and I see that there's like a black dot on the wall, and they get up close enough to it so it covers their entire retina. How are things? And they're like, dark. It's like, well, yeah, if you do that, if you just focus on that, then your world is pretty dark. But you don't have to do that. This is where you have some control into transforming your world into something great. And it really has to do with relationships. I know that if you've ever read people who've had near-death experiences or life-after-life kind of experiences coming back, almost all of them, they might have different things that happen to them, at least they talk about. And you might say, well, that's just what's happening to your brain, but I don't know. But I do know that the most common thing that they say is how important relationships are, how important love is, how much that is kind of everything. There's this thing called a life review, you've probably heard of this, where you get to see, sort of like in a flash, everything that happened in your life. This is what people report. And the thing that strikes them the most is, and this is the most painful, is the places in their life where they could have been loving and they weren't. They could have extended love and they didn't. And that's what hurts, you know. And so it is a transformative experience that we have this opportunity all the time to see things differently, to look for something else in a person, maybe see more in them than they're currently showing us, and interpret in a way that makes us feel good instead of in a way that makes us right. There's a lot of misunderstandings about relationships. Many people think relationships are for, like, why do you want a partner? It's like, well, so I don't have to be lonely. I don't want to be lonely, so I want a partner. Or I want to get my needs met, and this person can meet my needs, and that's why I want them. Or I just want, like, ego support, somebody to agree with me, make me right. That would be great. But that's not really what relationships are for. And when you look for that, you eventually run out of gas on that one. Even if you find somebody who does make you feel great. So many times I hear people say, she just doesn't do it for me anymore. She used to, but doesn't. It's just, Well, they're not. It's not. That was never their job. That's not why they're here. That's not why anybody's here, is to live up to your expectations or to help you avoid things that are uncomfortable. The purpose of relationships is actually to help you heal and help you grow, so you can transform your experience of this life into heaven, and that you can live in heaven now. And that's what relationships do for you. I've said this before, but you cannot be human unless you're raised by humans. Did you know that? You cannot be a human being unless you're raised by human beings. They found these little girls in India, remember this, in the early part of the century, who were raised by wolves. And they were 8 and 9. And they were walking on fours and with the whole wolf den and everything, and they brought them inside and tried to raise them, and they couldn't do it. One of them caught some disease and died almost immediately. And the other one, they worked with her for 25 years, and they said it never worked. Every time you walked in the room with her, you were definitely in the presence of an animal. It wasn't a human. You need humans. You need relationship. You need somebody around you to actually teach you how to be a human. You're not just born that way. And it's this idea that you have this power. First of all, being born in a physical body is a great way to think you're separate from everybody else. We could say, oh, we're all one, but come on. You have senses. I know where I stop and you begin. It's just, whatever the illusion is, it's awful strong. I'm not you, you're not me. That's how I know who I am. I'm not you. And that's how people start to individuate as adults. At first, you're almost merged with your parents, and then you don't even know it, but you've adopted all their beliefs and their values and stuff like this. You're like a little sponge as a little kid, and you're just soaking it all up. If you ask a fifth grader, are you a Democrat or a Republican? They would say, oh, I'm Democrat. Really? What are your parents? Oh, they're Democrats too. Like, do you think that has anything to do? No, they think I'm a Democrat and they're a Democrat. Or I'm a Republican, they're a Republican. It's only later that they define themselves, but still by their parents. If you ask an adolescent, who are you? What they'll tell you is who they're not. And they're like, well, I'm not that. I'll tell you that. I'm not him. I'm not her. I'm not like them. That's who I am. I'm not that. That's not really who you are either. But it's a useful process. In individuating, you have to sort of reject something to find out who you are in the middle. Well, there's something about, I love the idea of focusing on babies, because babies are fresh out of the experience of perfection and unconditional love that's in the womb, that's a lot longer than 9 months, considering how slow time moves when you're a kid. They spend a long, long time having all their needs met perfectly and anticipated perfectly, and it's pretty great, and it's longer than 9 months. You get that, why it's longer than 9 months? Do you remember how slow time went when you were 6 years old? How long it took to get through first grade? Well, wind that back to when you're 5, and then you're 4, and then you're 3, and then 2, and then 1, and then you go to the womb. You realize you're spending an eternity in there where all your needs are met, where everything's taken care of, where you have perfect temperature and perfect pH and perfect protection and perfect love and perfect nutrition. And your needs are so important that if you need calcium, it'll suck it out of your mother's bones and she can take a supplement. But you're getting the calcium. See what I mean? It's just so perfect. And then you get born and it's not so perfect. It's close, but it's not perfect. And what happens is by the time you actually don't have any filters when you're little. You can't block what's coming into you. You just absorb everything. You love these people, but if they're mean to you, you associate love with meanness. If they hit you, you associate love with hitting. You can't help it. And so later, it doesn't show up until you get into a relationship with someone. And that's what drives up the things that aren't healed. It drives up all of the experiences of hurt and fear that you had to kind of live with and adapt to. So this is a great opportunity. When you're in a relationship, instead of saying, I've got to find somebody who will protect me from those things, which is what most people do. My mother was very critical. She just had a comment about everything. Actually, her nickname was Constant Comment. You know that, T? And some of it was good and some of it was bad, but it was just never ending. And most of it was about superficial things and how we looked and what we were wearing and stuff like this. And I became very, very self-conscious. And so when I married Lauren, one of the things I loved about her is she just thought everything about me was great. And I was like, well, sign me up. Okay. I have now figured out the cure for all the criticism I got. And, but that didn't last very long. And after a while, I felt like I couldn't do anything right. And it was like, how did this happen? I married you precisely because I was going to avoid the criticism that I'm so sensitive to. And now I feel like you're ice picking me every 5 minutes. Well, that was actually very, very valuable. Because that's not why you marry somebody. That's not why you have a person in your life. It brought up all of these things that I never realized how sensitive I was or how much this really hurt me. And I got to heal from that. How do I heal from that? Not by making her be different, but by expressing myself until I got over it. This is what you can't do when you're a little kid. Early on you can, because kids are given permission to cry in a department store and be inappropriate. And if they're upset, they'll just let you know, like, bah! And you're like, all right. But later, they're not. They're really suppressed. And you have to keep these feelings in, and you don't get to process stuff, and you don't get over things. So the people in your life, whether it's a partner, your child, your parents, whatever it is in your life, they're driving up things in you so that you can transform them, so that you can heal them, so you can actually get over them, so you can let them be who they are and you can be who you are, not dependent on each other. You don't need someone around you to do that. And there's an interesting thing about being needy. Have you ever been around a very needy person? Or have you ever been one yourself? I mean, I've been needy in times. It's not pleasant. And needy people are kind of like a pariah. You're like, oh, and then this happened, and this happened, and this, and then it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then you're like, you meet them in the grocery store, and you're just like, please, God, don't let them stand behind me in the checkout counter. I can't, I'm so depressed. It's like, okay, people have needs, and it's nice to meet their needs, but that's not really why we're here. What you want to do is transform these things, because needs, a lot of things that people think they need are not needs. They're just things you want. We don't really need anything except food and clothing and shelter and maybe some affection, but not much more than that are real needs. There's a lot of things that people want. And the interesting thing about being needy is, when you're needy, nobody wants to give you what you want. Have you noticed that? Just try to go to a bank and tell them you need some money. You need money? Yeah, I don't have it. Well, you need credit. Yeah, you don't have any credit. I know, but I need credit. Could you give me a credit card? No, you don't have any credit. It's like, yeah, but I need, that's the point. Nobody wants to respond to you. Now, when you don't need money, you get letters from the bank and free credit cards. Have you noticed that? If you don't need anything, well, we'd like you to have this. Our $25,000 is already your credit limit. Just sign here. You're just like, I didn't ask for this. I know, but you don't seem to need it, so we would love to give it to you. See how that works? But there is something, I think there's something spiritual about that, because it isn't true. You don't need what you think you need from other people, from banks or anybody else. You just want that. There's nothing wrong with wanting it. But the notion that you're entitled to it, or that you need it, or they're wrong if they don't give you what you need, is what makes people unable to extend the love that they actually have for you. The strongest thing you can do is get yourself to a place where you're not needy. And then this miracle happens, just like with the banks. When you don't need love, you have plenty of it. When you don't need somebody to affirm you, to make up for what you didn't get as a child, to recapitulate what you did get as a child that you missed so desperately. When you don't need that, you can have that. And you will have that. Because you already do have that. And that's the point. You have all those things already inside yourself. And if you let your relationships drive up things that upset you and allow yourself to heal from them through self-expression, only self-expression, just let it out. Say how you feel. You get to a place where you no longer need something. All my life, I was sort of measuring how successful I was by whether my father was willing to send me a referral. My father was a pediatrician and I was a shrink. And he was in another city, but even so, sometimes he had patients around here, and I thought, I'll know I've made it when my dad says, I'm going to refer somebody to my son, okay? He never did. And the interesting thing was, I got over it. It upset me when I would think about it. I wouldn't like it, and I would, you could spin yourself corkscrew yourself into the ground with that. And then one day, just before he retired, he referred some kid to me. And the interesting thing was, I didn't need it. I was happy, it was nice. I did the best I could with this kid. Unfortunately, he was one of the people I could not help at all. It was interesting. Like, I don't think I can make a difference here. It didn't work. But I didn't care, he didn't care. It was like so great. I was like, it was nice, but it was way beyond when I needed him to endorse me to feel like I was okay about myself. And so it wasn't a calamity that I wasn't particularly helpful to this kid. It was just what happened. So just remember, when you meet anyone, you are creating your world. You are, by how you respond, by listening to them, by not judging them. The ego always wants to speak first. If there's a microphone, it's going to grab it first. Yeah, I got something to say. But there's something right behind that that's where your truth is. It's not just your first reaction. It's after you listen, after you calm down a little bit, after you think about it, maybe look at it from another place, interpret it a little bit differently. That's when you can really heal. When you meet someone, remember that it's a holy encounter. That's how you create a world that works for everyone. If you're committed to other people's success, you will be successful. If you're committed to their happiness, you will be happy. If you give to them, you will feel that coming through yourself. By offering love where you could easily offer judgment and justify it, like I said, with a lot of real estate in your head taken up justifying why you didn't give them love. If you just offer them love and see them as maybe more than they're currently showing you, this is how you create a loving world. In A Course in Miracles, it says, the holiest of all spots on earth is the place where an ancient hatred has become a present love. Anyway, thank you.